The travel turmoil continues for Sunwing passengers. Flights headed south to sunny destinations have been canceled.
Meantime, we're hearing from a family left waiting for hours at Pearson before finally being told to go back home. Good evening. Sunwing is blaming the problems on back-to-back snowstorms and separate disruptions in the wake of the crash at Pearson Airport.
The bottom line, passengers hoping for a winter getaway are grounded and staying home amid the snow. CTV's Janice Golding has been talking to passengers who were trying to get away. Janice.
Hi, Michelle. Yes, we're live right now at the arrivals gate at Terminal 3. And while you and the viewers may not be able to see us, you can actually see on the board behind us a slew of delayed Sunwing flights with frustrated passengers just trying to get home. There was no activity at the Sunwing check-in desks today. All southbound flights leaving Terminal 3 canceled for the second day in a row.
Now I'm sad.
Aisha Williams' 29th birthday trip to Cuba canceled.
They didn't even give us like a straight reason. They kept saying like, oh, they don't have enough crew members. They have like problems with their radio. And then they finally said it was the weather.
And Williams is far from alone.
We waited for 12 hours or 10 hours and then we're told our flight was canceled.
Yesterday, the Featherstone 6:15 a.m. flight was delayed until 11:15 a.m.
And then the app started showing 3 o'clock as a departure. But the screen in T2 said 11:15. And so, of course, everybody was asking questions, what's going on? The girl at the desk had no idea, and nobody would tell her what was going on.
Finally, at 1 p.m., Rebecca Featherstone says she and other passengers were told they'd get a refund and that they should go home. A statement on Sunwing's website calling the cancellations necessary to prioritize the safe return of customers currently delayed in destinations due to recent weather disruptions, crew availability constraints, and extremely limited hotel capacity. All of Sunwing's southbound flights are also canceled from Montreal's Pierre Elliott Trudeau International Airport today.
And to be fair to Sunwing, these are extreme circumstances, right? We're talking about the snow was unexpected. The plane crash did not help, obviously. So we want to have some patience, but at the same time, totally understand why travelers are frustrated.
Passengers whose flights were canceled were promised refunds within 21 days. But Featherstone's family is choosing to rebook their trip to March 1st.
The next trip, the only thing that we could afford was with Sunwing because everything it triples in price once you get into March.
Although she admits she's quite apprehensive about traveling with the discount airliner again. Now, travel expert Barry Choi says he always advocates that people purchase travel insurance to protect against trip cancellation or interruptions or baggage loss or damage. Reporting live, I'm Janice Golding. Now back to Nathan.
Thank you, Janice. Now to one woman's harrowing story trying to get home after a Sunwing vacation.
She says she's traumatized after a 3-day ordeal. CTV's Beth McDonnell has the story.
For Patricia McCartney and her boyfriend, the fun and relaxation from their Sunwing all-inclusive vacation to Dominican Republic is ruined.
We were just terrified. I'm completely traumatized. Like, I had a nightmare last night about being stuck at the airport.
Now home in Toronto, she was supposed to fly back Saturday with dozens of other passengers, but that turned into a 3-day ordeal made up of one crisis after another.
They just kept saying, call back in an hour, call back in an hour.
McCartney says when the initial flight was canceled, it went from going hours without food and water waiting at their resort to sleeping in the lobby one night and paying hundreds of dollars for a room a second night and a taxi to the airport the next day after the bus didn't show up.
We're all lined up waiting to board, and then we hear about a plane crash.
Once at the airport, they learned of more delays before being told to get on a bus to another resort for a third night of waiting. Without knowing what was next, McCartney says at 5 a.m. her boyfriend heard a text notification that their flight was boarding in 3 hours.
So we fly out of bed, run downstairs, and the bus is there and everybody's lined up and we're all checking out. And then at that point, we were told that the flight was canceled.
This time, she says Sunwing had a technical problem and couldn't find their trip before they eventually flew home Tuesday at 11 a.m. McCartney says she understands there were weather and Delta crash delays, but that doesn't excuse the way they were treated.
Sunwing did a horrible job of communicating with us, of setting us up with a place to stay. Like, it's a human right to be able to have food and water.
McCartney says having a hotel room until delays were sorted would have made sense.
There was people who had ran out of their insulin for their babies with type 1 diabetes. I'm a registered pharmacy technician. There was a girl who was withdrawing from her hydromorphone painkillers.
She wants the company to reimburse her for the $2,300 trip and over $700 worth of expenses. Some customers are being directed to submit a claim.
I'm telling everybody and their cousins to never fly with Sunwing again.
CTV News has reached out to Sunwing for comment but has yet to hear back. Beth McDonnell, CTV News.
Now to the follow-up to the Delta Airlines crash on Monday at Pearson. Delta says the final 2 passengers who were still in hospital have been cleared to go home. 80 people were on board the flight from Minneapolis when it crashed and flipped upside down. Delta's CEO says all 21 patients who were sent to hospital are now out. The carrier also offered $30,000 U.S. in goodwill payments that it says won't impact passengers' option to pursue legal action. The remnants of the jet were removed from the tarmac at Pearson yesterday, although 2 runways remain closed today while the Transportation Board of Canada tries to figure out what caused the incident.
All right, time now for a check on the forecast. There's a live shot at Nathan Phillips Square. A little chilly to be outside if you're going to go for a skate, so bundle up. At least the major snowfalls are behind us and more seasonal weather is to come, but today it's chilly. Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions. Lindsay.
You're right, Nathan. It will be chilly tonight as well, and then the gradual warm-up starts to kick in for the weekend. We're dealing with a little bit of active weather once again near the shores of Lake Huron, some lake effect snow, and we've had flurries around the GTA. Right now it's the west end and in through Niagara. That is going to taper off as we make our way into the evening hours. Winds, though, coming out of the northwest, making it feel chilly out there. It feels like the minus teens right now. Currently minus 9 degrees at Pearson Airport, feeling like minus 16, and we're looking at a wind chill overnight tonight of minus 20. We're going to talk about the improvements temperature-wise that are in store, especially for next week. Coming up, for now though, Michelle, I'll send it over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Well, that warm-up she's talking about is not coming soon enough. City crews are working 24/7 to clear city streets after 2 major snowstorms.
And the work is continuing block by block. CTV's Jessica Smith's been keeping tabs on the cleanup this afternoon and joins us live with more. Jessica.
Nathan, Michelle, the residents I spoke to today say although they understand it takes time to clean up all the snow, they are still frustrated with the progress and the time it's taking.
Well, it's so much snow in the last few days. I'm sure the city was trying to do some stuff, but can they get to all of it?
The still snow-covered residential streets and snow-packed sidewalks continue to slow down residents across the city.
Where can we go? Like the activities of the kids, and then, you know, it's like takes forever to walk, especially with this one. She keeps on tumbling down.
Some are worried about where the snow will go when the city eventually gets to their neighborhood.
There's nowhere to put the snow. There's nowhere to put it.
I understand the importance of clearing the snow.
Mayor Olivia Chow spoke earlier today while stopping by to observe some of the city's snow clearing efforts. Work, she says, is happening 24 hours a day, with the city continuing to go block by block, telling residents to be prepared to move their vehicles.
We will give people notice. We will we'll knock on doors. We'll put signs up. As you can see, snow removal in the next 48 hours, right? You see a big orange sign. Please move your car.
For some, moving their snowed-in cars from their parking spots on narrow city streets is easier said than done.
My wife's car is parked down the street, and I can't get it out. You know what? There's ice now.
According to Mayor Chow, if you don't move your vehicle when it's time for your street to be plowed, it could result in getting towed. With some unsettled weather on the way in the short and long range forecast, residents say they will have to wait and see if that impacts the cleanup progress. Reporting live, I'm Jessica Smith. Michelle, I'll send things back inside to you.
Thank you, Jess. York Regional Police have dismantled a break-in ring involved in almost 50 separate incidents.
And one victim is speaking out about the sense of violation. CTV's Allison Hurst reports.
Pry bars, radios, a gun, just some of the items seized by police during Project Dusk in York Region.
A break-in is more than a criminal act. It is a violation.
Natalia's home was targeted, hit while her mom was getting the tires changed and she was at work. Taken were sentimental items of life with her dad, who died when she was 9 months old.
My mom's engagement ring, their wedding bands, my dad's belongings, every last memory we had of him.
She says her mom was gone for 1 hour.
When I found out that a weapon was later recovered, I felt sick. Knowing that there was a chance that I could have lost the only parent that I have left.
Project Dusk ran for a second year spanning October to January. It resulted in 20 suspects arrested, now facing more than 230 charges.
Every single one of these individuals arrived in York Region from outside the borders of Canada. And we believe their sole purpose for coming here was to commit crime for profit.
Investigators recovered more than $2 million worth of stolen items like jewelry, watches, bags, and cash, all linked to 47 residents during a time of year police say property thefts typically surge.
Shortly after the daylight savings ends in the fall and return home to their countries in the spring after they've committed crime.
Police say thefts usually happen between 6 and 10 p.m. Thieves conduct surveillance and some even use tools called signal jammers, not allowed in Canada, to defeat wireless cameras.
These criminals, as a general rule, are not looking for confrontation.
Natalia says her family is constantly on edge.
I don't know if we'll ever recover from this.
York Regional Police have issued a warrant for a 21st person and say 6 groups were dismantled and disrupted during the course of the investigation. Allison Hurst, CTV News, Aurora.
The hunt is on for 2 inmates who escaped from prison in Gravenhurst. Staff at Beaver Creek Institution discovered 70-year-old Jay Sedora and 68-year-old Michael Karas were missing during a head count at dinner yesterday. Sedora is serving an indeterminate sentence for first-degree murder, while Karas was sentenced to 15 years for robbery, forcible confinement, and using an imitation firearm. Police believe they were picked up in a gray sedan at around 1 p.m. yesterday. Corrections Canada says it is investigating how the pair escaped. If you see these men, you're advised not to approach and call 911.
Now to one of the most anticipated hockey showdowns in years.
It's Canada versus the U.S. tonight at the Four Nations Face-Off Final, and fans are ready for the big game. Our Sean Leathong has been sizing up the excitement, and Sean, it seems this showdown is about more than just hockey.
There seems to be a lot on the line. You're right, Michelle, because the political atmosphere that's taken over the last couple of months seems to be finding its way into hockey. I'm here at Real Sports at downtown Toronto, right across from Scotiabank Arena. And believe it or not, the seats are already filling up in here. A lot of Team Canada jerseys, and any tables that are not full right now, they've got one of these signs on it because everybody wants to be here knowing the game is in the United States. This rivalry between Canada and the United States, going to a best-on-best tournament final, really dates back a long way. We go back to the 1991 Canada Cup, the 1996 World Cup, the 2002 Salt Lake City Olympics, and then you have the 2010 Vancouver Olympics. All great games, Canada winning 3 of the 4, but we do know they dropped the opener against the U.S. in this tournament. I spoke to some fans a little while ago, and they say they're not bothered.
It's Team Canada. It's what we've always done. It's in our DNA. Sidney Crosby's got the C on his chest. He's going to do what he always does. We're going to be just great.
You're not the least bit nervous?
Not at all.
Are you nervous?
I'm not nervous. I'm pretty confident. I will say it's going to be a tough game. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a bit of a slog, but I think it's worth the watch. I think it's worth the effort, and I think Canada can pull this off.
Now we're seeing a lot of Sidney Crosby Pittsburgh Penguins jerseys in here. We're also seeing Austin Matthews jerseys as well, being the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs and the captain of Team USA. I did ask this guy who he's cheering for. He did say Team Canada. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leathong. Nathan Michelle, send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean. While the fans can't wait for 8 o'clock, neither can the players.
Obviously, it's a big game. It's been a long time since best on best has played, like we've talked about. So it's going to be a cool moment. It's going to be a lot of people watching, and it's good to have support.
The goal from the first day was to be here, and we accomplished that so far. Now we have another one we need to attack tonight, but guys are excited. We're we know the opportunity we have in front of us, and we're excited about it.
The political side of things, we feel for everybody on our side of things, but I think for us to come here and to be in that room, it's going to mean more for us to win that game, to sit there and debate what the game means. We have to go out there and represent our country and make them proud.
Well, we are just a week away from the Ontario election.
And frontrunners are ramping up their pitch to voters. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris has the latest.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Ontario's Liberal leader making a big commitment to mental health care, opening up about her childhood with an absent alcoholic father, and the questions that linger about what might have been if he'd had help.
What would life had been like? What kind of grandfather would he have made to my kids?
A story Crombie says she wanted to share.
Not because it's unique, but because it's not.
The Liberals now promising to have OHIP cover mental health care.
Up and running, it would cost $1 billion, but I truly think that money exists from the transfers that we receive from the federal government.
Doug Ford in full Canadiana mode, campaigning in a hockey jersey alongside Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston.
As we build up Canada's economy, we need to tear down internal trade barriers.
Some of the commitments are long-time complaints from business and political leaders.
We're ready to sell Ontario's world-class beer, cider, and wines to more Canadian customers across our country.
Ford and Houston will be in Washington on Friday, meeting with U.S. governors, making the case against tariffs. A trip the PC leader insists has value, despite the U.S. president's apparent resolve.
The worst thing we could do is sit back and say, let's not bother going down there. Let's not communicate.
I will fight like hell for every single
I am voting for you. Okay, all right.
The NDP leader getting some support after casting her own ballot on the first day advance polls are open.
To show people that you can get out, you can vote anytime now pretty much. It's easy, it's fun.
And knowing she'll be busy on election day supporting other campaigns. Today making stops in 2 Toronto ridings, one where there's stiff competition from the Liberals.
We were going to get as many people as possible out voting today.
Mike Schreiner was in Kitchener trying to return his deputy leader to Queen's Park.
The Ontario Greens, inspired by the great work Ashland Clancy's done here in Kitchener Centre, will put forward legislation and fight to protect tenants across the province of Ontario.
Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
To the federal political landscape, and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has pledged to make it more affordable to buy a home and work with politicians of any political stripe. The comments were made during an interview on CP24.
Mr. Carney's a very sneaky guy. He has been Trudeau's economic advisor for the last 5 years. And what has been the result? Housing costs have doubled. Lineups at food banks have doubled. The national debt has doubled. He has helped Justin Trudeau impose the carbon tax and pushed for that tax to go up even more. And now he plans a real sneaky trick. He's going to hide the carbon tax for 2 months right before the election so that it will not appear at the gas station. But after the election's over, he'll bring in a much bigger carbon tax. That's why the people keep calling him Carbon Tax Carney.
Here in the city, in the battle against Toronto traffic, there's no silver bullet. But business leaders have compiled an action plan.
The Board of Trade calling on City Hall to implement a series of steps to get goods, services, and people moving and fast. CTV's Natalie Johnson has those details.
In a city ground to a halt by gridlock, there is growing consensus that congestion has become a crisis.
The only time I take my car out is when I have to go outside downtown Toronto, and that's all I can do.
It just makes us look bad, right? Like, there's so many cities that have a good system.
With the cost of congestion pegged at $45 billion a year across the GTHA, the Board of Trade is clear City Hall cannot afford to wait to act.
The city is not oblivious at all to the congestion crisis, but I think what we're trying to do is push harder, faster.
Today, unveiling an action plan targeting travel times, pinch points, and hotspots, calling on the city to reduce lane closures by using pricing to incentivize faster construction and restrict closures on major arterials during peak travel times. crack down on drivers who block the box and impede the flow of traffic with more automated enforcement, move bike lanes off dedicated connector roads for vehicles, take parking off-street where lots are available, and limit curb lane patios where they disrupt traffic. Clear bottlenecks around the Gardner by restricting turns and adding more traffic signals, and establish a top-level traffic czar as the point person for overseeing it all.
I don't see any sense that this is pushing anything uphill. This is really what we're seized with among other priorities of the city.
There are quite a few things that we are already doing as part of the plan. Lots more we can do, but let's do it together.
Acknowledging all the other priorities of the city, we think this ought to be number one and treated as number one, which means other things are going to have to be maybe put aside a little bit or toned down a little bit in order to get this done, because it'll have a huge impact on everything else.
With the economy at stake, the business leaders behind the plan insist, unlike the traffic, City Hall cannot stand still. Natalie Johnson, CTV News.
The clock is officially ticking down to a potential strike or lockout involving tens of thousands of city staff. CUPE Local 79 represents the city's inside workers. They'll now be in a legal strike position as of Saturday, March 8th, after the Ministry of Labor issued a no board report. The group includes staff in public health, ambulance dispatch, court services, childcare, and long-term care. The union says wages are the biggest sticking point in reaching a deal. It's also warning every Torontonian would feel the impact of a work stoppage.
The services people rely on every day will come to a halt. Building and construction permits will be delayed. Community recreation programs will be shut down. March break camps will be canceled.
The city says there are contingency plans in place to deliver critical services if the 27,000 unionized staff walk off the job. It also says it's waiting to hear back about an offer of a nearly 15% wage increase spread over 4 years. Stellantis is temporarily pausing work on the next generation of Jeep Compass at its Brampton assembly plant. Now, the new electric SUV was scheduled to go into production later this year, but the company says it's continuing to reassess its product strategy in North America. Activities at the plant are also being suspended. Stellantis says previously announced investment plans for the facility will not change. Ontario and the federal government announced in 2022 they'd each spend $132 million to help modernize the plant.
U.S. President Donald Trump has spoken about potential automobile tariffs in addition to a host of other possible duties on Canada and other countries. Now we could be facing even more U.S. levies. The U.S. president said last night he's considering a 25% duty on Canadian lumber and forest products. Canada's forestry sector has described any tariffs as unnecessary and unwarranted. It says the United States meets about 70% of its home building lumber needs domestically and uses Canadian lumber to fill the gap. Trump has already threatened us with 25% duties on all Canadian goods and 10% tariffs on Canadian energy, but that plan has been on pause until March 4th. Still to come on CTV News, there's another proposed plan to save the city from gridlock. This time, the Board of Trade is chiming in. CTV's Natalie Johnson has the roadmap right ahead.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, many families are making decisions about where their children will go to college or university next year. Students who live in residence will most likely have to pay for a meal plan, whether they want one or not. All of that story, that's just ahead.
Well, it is a good winter to be a skier or a snowboarder. Conditions look excellent at resorts across the province. And not only that, but travel conditions will be good if you're heading to Collingwood, Muskoka, or the Kawarthas this weekend. Next week's warm-up, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. We have a few clippers moving in, and that could mean some mixed precipitation. We'll talk about that coming up. And stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
We have more now on the Four Nations Cup final. There is so much buzz about this game. National pride is at a fever pitch. Questions about whether the Americans are threatening our position as the world's #1 hockey nation. And then there are the political atmosphere surrounding the game against our rivals from the South. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth is in Boston tonight for the big game. What is the buzz like where you are?
Well, the buzz is strong. We've been here for about a day. And look, I would say there are 3,000 or 4,000 Canadian fans milling about outside the arena. One will assume that they will all be getting into the rink. There are thousands of fans wearing USA jerseys, thousands of fans wearing Canadian jerseys, and we've also talked to Canadian fans this morning who are commenting rather strongly on some of the themes going back and forth with our country. One fan this morning said that he woke up to see what President Trump said about Canada. He didn't like it, he's offended by it, and he's hoping the Canadian hockey players step up and win the game tonight just as a form of patriotism. It adds a theme to what we're seeing all day long. A lot of competition, a lot of rivalry, a lot of intensity going back with both sides of the border, and a lot of loud, boisterous fans here in downtown Boston set for what looks to be a very historic showdown.
And many are wondering what's going to happen, especially in the first few seconds of this game. Politics aside, what is at stake?
Well, look, I mean, the first few seconds of the game on Saturday, 3 fights, and it really set the tone for how nasty this has become. I kind of wonder if some of that will die down and maybe these teams know a championship, but this tournament's at stake, and it turns into a more traditional hockey game. We'll find out for sure. Also, when we get inside the rink, watching what happens in the stands will be very interesting because there will be thousands of fans cheering for Team Canada, probably 4 times as many fans cheering for the Americans, and there will be maybe booing of anthems as well. So I look for the atmospherics in the rink to be something to watch closely when it comes to, you know, getting our handle on how intense this will be both on the ice and in the stands.
Yeah, you hope there's no anthem booing. We did lose in the first game. We're on the road. Who do you think is the favorite in this game?
Well, I mean, the Americans won 3-1 on Saturday. They're the home team tonight, so you'd have to give them the advantage. Connor Hellebuck in goal is a very good goalie, arguably the best goalie in the tournament. Advantage USA. So I don't think the Americans are the prohibitive favorites, but they're probably the favorites to win this game. But a Canadian team that has McKinnon and Marner and Crosby and all the players on that team, the star-studded players. Bottom line, there are a lot of good reasons why Canadian fans, like the one who just joined me a second ago, should feel optimistic. But if you don't score a goal in Connor Hellebuck, you don't win the game. So they're going to have to find a way to solve Connor Hellebuck. They only scored 1 goal against him on Saturday. 1 goal in a game is probably not enough to win a game tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be a classic. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth in Boston, prepping the big game. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Many students are in the process of choosing a college or university for the fall.
For those staying in residence, they'll most likely have to pay for a meal plan, whether they want one or not. And some students say that's not fair. Here's Pat Foran and Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Nathan. Michelle, the cost to stay in residence is expensive, and meal plans can also add thousands of dollars per semester. Most schools make the plans mandatory, but some students say if they have dietary restrictions, they shouldn't be forced to pay for them. Every year, more than 2 million students head off to college and university in Canada, and those who are living in residence usually must purchase a meal plan. The mandatory plans can be expensive, have limited options, and are often non-refundable.
I have some disabilities that make it so that I just am very sensitive to the foods that I eat.
Mathusha asked us not to identify her. She is a third-year student at York University who lives in residence. Along with paying rent, she has to pay for a meal plan that costs almost $5,000 for the year. Mathusha says she has a disability and dietary restrictions and can't eat any of the food in the plan she was forced to purchase.
I'm not able to use any of it, and I haven't used a dime so far.
The student says she has to bring special meals from home. With grocery prices at all-time highs, she feels she should be allowed to get a refund for the meal plan she's not using.
It's really disappointing, and it's really frustrating. It's really difficult and stressful.
The Canadian Federation of Students says students are facing financial pressures, and many complain they should not be forced into mandatory meal programs. There are also concerns about the quality and quantity of food students receive.
A lot of students also have to pay residence fees and meal plan fees, and the meal plans can be very restrictive and very inaccessible for a lot of students.
CTV News reached out to York University, and a spokesperson said it wants to ensure students have access to healthy food options and that dorm-style rooms on our campuses do not have a kitchen. That's why York's meal plan is mandatory for students living in these spaces on campus. York said students are required to inform the university of dietary needs when they apply to residence. After receiving documents regarding Mathusha's diet, the school offered her a prorated refund of almost $3,000. Mathusha would have to switch to a residence with cooking facilities where the meal plan is not mandatory, an option she is now considering. And in the fall, students at Humber College tried to organize a protest over mandatory meal plans, saying they should be optional. If you're going to school this fall, you'll want to research the plans carefully and warn the school in advance if you have dietary restrictions. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
Well, the headline on the weather front tonight is the cold. It's pretty cold out there. And then when you factor in the wind chill, you have to bundle up.
Yeah, it's, I mean, at least we got the snow behind us, but it's chilly. Man, we do have a warm up to look forward to, so at least we can focus on that.
We do, and it's been a couple of weeks since we've experienced a temperature above the freezing mark, but that's what's expected to happen. Likely not until next week, but it's going to start to feel a little more comfortable out there over the next couple of days. But we have a cold night to get through tonight, and maybe a few flurries in places too. Let's take a look at what it looked like a little bit earlier today around the GTA. Flurries were flying at one point. We had mostly cloudy skies and some sunny breaks. The winds have picked up. We're starting to see now the worst of the cold tonight and tomorrow night, and then it's going to be behind us. But once again, we find ourselves feeling into the minus teens at this hour. Here's what that looks like. Still very cold in through northern parts of Ontario, and not quite as cold in through the south, but still a little bitter. If we can, we'll take a look at the current temperatures here, and you'll notice that still those darker blues around northern parts of Ontario, but not the deep purples. That's going to go away, and in its place, we will experience maybe daytime highs around 3 degrees a couple of times next week, but we've also got a couple of clipper systems moving in, so that could mean mixed precipitation. We'll talk about that momentarily. Overnight tonight, we're falling to around minus 12, minus 13 degrees, and yes, it is going to feel like minus 20 out there, so bundle up, especially early risers tomorrow morning. We do expect the temperature to climb to maybe minus 5, minus 4 degrees tomorrow if we're lucky. Winds are going to ease as the afternoon goes on, and we should be able to enjoy some sunshine. So all in all, it's not a bad day tomorrow. It's a nice way to kick off the weekend. We do still have a winter weather travel advisory in place for tonight. If you're joining us from closer to the shores of Lake Huron or perhaps London, Ontario, you are included in this. Maybe a couple of additional centimeters of snow at this point, but it is starting to taper off. We've had some flurries around the GTA too. Those are weakening, a couple of centimeters accumulating around St. Catharines, but it's all coming to an end as we make our way through the overnight hours tonight. And overall, it's pretty quiet on the weather front over the next day or so here. That's a nice change of pace. Worth mentioning that there's a chance of flurries as we make our way into the weekend, especially to the east of Georgian Bay. Not so much for tomorrow, but as we make our way into the day on Saturday. The weekend is expected to be mostly cloudy, so keep that in mind. And Saturday night and into Sunday, we see a slightly elevated chance of flurries here locally, but it's Monday and Tuesday where we have a couple of clipper systems moving in. And at this point, because it's going to be mild, we can expect it to come in the form of some wet snow, maybe change over to rain, especially along the 401 corridor and south. Looks like that potential for mixing will be with us right through the middle part of next week too. That's the weather for now. Nathan, I'll send it over to you.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. Also tonight, doctors at Sunnybrook are going back to basics with stethoscope checkups aimed at identifying heart disease. That's after the break.
A quick, simple test is helping doctors from Sunnybrook Health Sciences identify patients with heart valve problems.
Our health reporter Pauline Chan explains.
The cardiac team from Sunnybrook paid a special visit to residents at the Bob Rumble Center for the Deaf to give their hearts a listen, and certified interpreters were on hand to help.
They come here, and today we're doing a heart checkup, a stethoscope checkup, and for our seniors that are here, it saves us going, 75 of us going down to the hospital.
What are the doctors and nurses listening for?
If a murmur is detected, then it starts this cascade that we're really good at. But that first step needs to be done. And so this is an awareness campaign really to encourage people over the age of 65 to have their hearts listened to.
Unusual sounds tell the listener that something is wrong with the valves of the heart.
The doctor was asking me about if I had any symptoms of heart conditions, and I was explaining, yes, I had some tightness in my chest, and I also have I suffer from bronchitis and breathing, so when they were asking about my breathing, that was an issue.
Herberto Cedres has to go in for further tests, but the good news is there are many successful treatments for heart valve diseases. The stethoscope test is simple and inexpensive, yet many just can't get one.
As you know, there is a shortage of family physicians across the country and certainly within this province.
But Dr. Harindra Wijasundra says at their last community event, 39 people were screened and 3 had heart murmurs.
They hope to screen some 50 people at this stethoscope check, and Sunnybrook hopes to schedule another event in September. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
Over 3 years after the release of No Time to Die, Amazon MGM says it's taken creative control of the James Bond franchise.
If we don't do this, there will be nothing left to save.
Longtime Bond custodians Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli say they're stepping back and handing over the franchise after decades of family control. Financial terms were not disclosed. The pair will remain part of a joint venture with Amazon MGM that owns the intellectual property rights for the iconic spy character. Amazon has suggested it has plans to expand James Bond beyond the beloved original novels and movie adaptations. And Amazon founder Jeff Bezos celebrated the news, posting on social media, "Who'd you pick as the next Bond?" as fans wait to see who takes on the role after Daniel Craig.
HBO set the release date for the next season of The Last of Us.
Oh, you want to start or what?
Catherine O'Hara is among the new faces joining the cast in season 2, which was filmed in BC. The Last of Us is based on 2 video games about a pair of zombie apocalypse survivors in a post-disaster United States. The 7-episode season debuts April 13th.
Paul Simon is coming out of retirement to go on his first tour in 7 years.
Hello, my friends.
The 83-year-old is set to play 3 shows at Massey Hall on May 27th, 29th, and 30th. The tour kicks off April 4th in New Orleans and ends August 3rd in Seattle. Simon, who has lost most of his hearing in his left ear, was set to retire in 2018 after going on a farewell tour. Tickets for this upcoming tour go on sale tomorrow.
He didn't win any Grammy Awards, but singer Benson Boone is chalking up another big music industry win. Boone's hit Beautiful Things has been named the best-selling single of 2024 across all digital formats. The honor is granted by the IFPI, the organization that represents the global recorded music industry. The song beat Sabrina Carpenter's Espresso and Teddy Swims' track Lose Control, which rounded out the top 3. Earlier this week, Taylor Swift was the overall best-selling artist for the 3rd year in a row.
After the break, taking a shot at building a WNBA roster, the Toronto Tempo introduces the first general manager in franchise history.
We waited for 12 hours or 10 hours, and then we're told our flight was canceled.
Updating our top stories, Sunwing customers are still dealing with travel disruptions after back-to-back snowstorms and the plane crash at Pearson Airport. The airline canceled all southbound flights today for the 2nd day in a row. Sunwing says it's prioritizing the return of passengers still unable to return home from their destinations.
And speaking of Monday's plane crash at Pearson, all 21 patients taken to hospital after the incident are now out of hospital. That's according to Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian. The remains of the jet, which had flown in from Minneapolis, were removed from the tarmac at Pearson yesterday. 2 runways remain closed today as the Transportation Board of Canada investigates.
If we come out tonight with everything that we got, we'll take home the championship.
And we're just over an hour away from one of the most anticipated hockey showdowns in years. Team Canada and Team USA will meet at the Four Nations Face-Off final in Boston. The Canadians are hoping for a comeback victory after losing to the Americans 3-1 last week. The game also has some added attention thanks to U.S. President Donald Trump's taunts about making Canada the 51st state.
Remember to keep up to date day and night at ctvnewstoronto.ca and by downloading the CTV News app. And if you ever have a news tip, photos or video of breaking news, let us know.
Another day, another tariff threat from the U.S. president.
And if the resource being targeted is in fact tariffed, it's likely the province of BC that would suffer the most. Here's BNN Bloomberg's Morella Fernandez.
Canadian softwood lumber is Donald Trump's new target. The American president is threatening to introduce a 25% tariff on all forest products sometime in April. For decades, the U.S. has accused Ottawa of subsidizing the industry. Softwood exports are already hit with American duties of more than 14%. Canada supplies about 30% of the lumber used in the U.S., and if tariffs do kick in, the cost of building homes in the U.S. could rise. The threat of penalizing companies that aren't headquartered in the U.S. may be one reason TFI is rolling its HQ out of Canada and into the U.S. The transportation and logistics company is now based in Quebec, but announced it will move within a year. The decision is being blasted by a Quebec pension manager that has a stake in the firm. TFI also missed expectations in its latest earnings report, and together, the news sent the stock south. It lost about 20% of its value. Stock in cruise lines also took a dive today after the American Commerce Secretary suggested a tax crackdown on ships that dock in the U.S. At one point today, Royal Caribbean stock sank more than $20, or about 9%. Norwegian and Carnival were down about 7%. Some experts say investors are overreacting. Let's take a look at the markets today. The Canadian dollar ends the day up a fraction, just above 70.5 cents U.S. Oil on the West Texas Intermediate up slightly, hitting 72.48 U.S. a barrel. According to our latest fix on Western Canadian Select, it's up 76 cents at 58.60, and the TSX down 112 points to 25,514. Those are your business headlines from the BNN Bloomberg Newsroom. I'm Morella Fernandez.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
Loblaw is planning a major expansion with 80 new grocery stores and pharmacies due to open across the country this year. The company says 50 of the new locations will be discount stores. Loblaw and other major Canadian grocers have been putting more money into their discount banners as shoppers look for cheaper options. Loblaw says its fourth quarter profits were down compared to a year ago as more members collected and redeemed loyalty program points.
Stocks in Manulife Financial saw their biggest gain in a year after the company beat expectations for its fourth quarter. The insurance firm saw earnings of $1.03 per share, higher than analysts' forecasts of 94 cents. Those shares in the Toronto-based insurance firm were up as much as 8.5% in morning trading. They lost some ground to close up 6.6%.
A Royal LePage survey shows most Canadians with mortgage renewals this year are bracing for a hit to their finances. The real estate company says more than 1 million mortgages are up for renewal across the country this year. Out of 1,300 homeowners in that situation, 57% expect to face higher monthly borrowing costs. That figure includes 35% bracing for a slight increase and 22% fearing a significant jump in their mortgage payments. Many homeowners renewing this year would have signed their mortgages under the historically low rates early in the COVID pandemic.
Toronto's expansion WNBA team officially introduced its general manager today.
Whatever our identity is on court will be a combination of, what I believe in and what our future head coach believes in. And so we'll be able to speak more on that when we have that position in place. But I think defense is something that, wins championships at the end of the day. So you really can't not have that in your on-court product.
Monica Wright-Rogers was hired by the league's first Canadian franchise about a month ago. The former player, coach, and assistant GM will work to build a basketball operations department from scratch. She says immediate plans revolve around listening and learning. The Tempo begin play next year.
Just ahead, firefighters battle a house fire in Oshawa, tackling the flames and tracking down a cat caught up in the chaos. While a fortunate feline in Oshawa is safe thanks to the quick work of firefighters. This lucky kitty was saved by crews after a fire broke out at a home in the northeast of the city this afternoon. It didn't take long for firefighters to get control of that blaze, and fortunately, there were no injuries.
Good to hear. So how are things looking tonight and tomorrow?
Another cold night tonight. During the daytime hours tomorrow, we'll start to feel a little more comfortable, but it's really going to take until about Sunday for the winds to ease. And tonight, we're watching for the snow to taper off. It's very light in nature, so if you're heading out for an evening stroll, just bring the winter jacket, but you might not need to worry about too much in the way of fresh snow. There's your weekend forecast. Mostly cloudy. Notice the calmer winds on Sunday, so that makes it feel more comfortable out there. And then we're mild above the freezing mark Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. Michelle and Nathan.
Triple threes. Thank you so much, Lindsay. That's it for us, but you can catch Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zoraida Allman with your next local newscast at 11:30.
Meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and the whole team here at CTV News, thanks for watching and have a great night.